It started like most small favors do, casual, harmless, with no intention of spiraling into something more. My husband, Josh, had always been close with Lacey. They'd been best friends since college, the kind of bond that felt unshakable, even if slightly strange to those who didn't know them. I'll admit, I always felt a flicker of discomfort around her. Not because of anything she did, but because of how effortlessly she fit into my husband's world. Their inside jokes, their long glances across the dinner table, their shared language of memories that didn't include me. Still, I never said anything. I trusted Josh. And when Lacey called him one night sobbing about her breakup, I knew what was coming before he even put the phone down. "She's a mess, Liv," he said, rubbing his temples. "Her apartment lease just ended. She's got nowhere to go. Just a couple weeks. 2 tops." I smiled. "Of course. She can stay." And just like that, she arrived. 2 overstuffed suitcases, a duffel bag, and the scent of expensive shampoo followed her into our guest room. At first, it was fine. She cried a lot, wore baggy hoodies, slept late. Josh doted on her, brought her coffee in the mornings, made her laugh at night. I tried not to feel invisible. She was healing. I understood. But 2 weeks came and went, and no one brought up the question of when she'd leave. Her things started multiplying: the toothbrush in our master bathroom, her coat hanging next to mine, her favorite snacks tucked in our pantry. She slipped into our routines like she'd always been there, like she belonged more than I did. I brought it up once, gently. "Has Lacey started looking for a place yet?" Josh blinked at me like I'd asked something offensive. "She's still grieving, Liv. Can't you give her some space to breathe?" So I backed off. Again. I kept trying to be the bigger person, the understanding wife, the generous host, the quiet shadow. But the longer she stayed, the more I faded. It wasn't just that she was still living here, it was how comfortable she'd become. She took over the remote. She cooked dinner, always his favorites. She beat me to chores, made snide comments dressed as jokes, and sat too close to him on the couch. One night, I came home late and found the 2 of them wrapped in blankets, laughing at an old show we used to watch together. Neither of them heard me come in. I stood in the hallway for a full minute before making my presence known. When I did, they barely moved apart. It was then that I felt it, not just suspicion, but erasure. Like I was no longer the wife, but a guest in my own home. I started noticing the little things first. Her coffee mug always left in the same spot I used to leave mine, the one with the tiny chip on the handle that I always meant to replace. She began using my shampoo. She even borrowed one of my sweaters one afternoon without asking. When I brought it up to Josh, he just shrugged. "She probably didn't realize it was yours," he said. What's the big deal? That phrase, "what's the big deal," became his anthem. Anytime I tried to raise my discomfort, anytime I pointed out how she was slowly replacing me, he met me with that same dismissive question. I was the one with the problem. I was being paranoid, insecure, dramatic. And maybe I was. That's the problem when you're gaslight by kindness. Lacey was never overtly cruel. If anything, she was sweet to me in that syrupy, condescending way that made me question if I was imagining everything. "You work too hard," she'd say. "Josh says you never take time for yourself." Or, "You're lucky to have someone like him. He's so patient." It was all smoke. Subtle ways of reminding me that she knew him better. That maybe she deserved him more. One night, I came home from work later than usual. A big meeting had run over. As I pushed the door open, I heard music coming from the kitchen. Jazz, Josh's favorite. Laughter, hers. I walked in and saw them dancing. Slowly, lazily, her arms around his neck, his hands on her waist. They froze when they saw me. The guilt was immediate and loud. I felt it like a slap to the face. "Oh, hey," she said, smiling too brightly. "We were just messing around." Josh said this song reminded him of college. Josh nodded, not meeting my eyes. "Yeah, just being silly, right." I went upstairs without another word. I laid in bed that night staring at the ceiling, listening to them laugh downstairs, wondering how we had gotten here. How I had become a ghost in my own marriage. I thought about confronting him. About drawing a hard line to her or me. But I knew how that would go. He'd defend her. Say I was overreacting. I didn't want to hear it again. So, I waited. I watched. I started documenting the days, like a scientist observing a slow decay. Day 43, she made his favorite risotto. He thanked her with a kiss on the cheek. Day 52, I came home to find her wearing one of his hoodies, curled up on my side of the couch. Day 60, she called our bedroom his room, and still she never left. At some point, I stopped trying to make sense of it. I moved through the house like a guest, hyper-aware of every word, every glance, every unspoken shift in mood. The air between Josh and me grew thicker by the day, not quite hostile, but loaded. He was present physically, but absent in every way that mattered. We barely touched anymore. We barely spoke. And when we did, it was surface-level nonsense. Grocery lists. Bill reminders. The occasional, "Did you feed the dog?" It was mechanical. Like we were business partners instead of husband and wife. Lacey, on the other hand, bloomed. Her heartbreak apparently had a fast expiration date, because she was glowing now. Smiling more. Laughing easily. Taking over the house like she owned it. She redecorated her guest room, bought new sheets and curtains, rearranged the furniture. Josh helped her paint an accent wall one weekend while I was out of town visiting my sister. When I returned and saw the change, I said nothing. I was tired. So tired. There was a shift in me I hadn't noticed until then. I stopped hoping for things to go back to normal. I stopped trying to reclaim my space. A part of me, the part that still believed Josh was on my side, had quietly died, and I hadn't even mourned it. I was past anger. I was living in numbness. Then came the night everything finally cracked open. I came home early from work. I hadn't told anyone, not Josh, not Lacey. I just wanted to surprise him with dinner for once. Something simple. A small attempt to reconnect. I parked her on the block and walked home with a bouquet of sunflowers and a bottle of red wine. I remember feeling nervous. Like a teenager before prom. I unlocked the front door, stepped inside, and heard laughter coming from upstairs. Our bedroom. At first, I stood there, frozen. And then, I walked. Up the stairs. Quiet. One step at a time. The door was ajar. I saw them. Not kissing. Not undressed. But close. Too close. Lacey was sitting on the edge of our bed, her legs tucked under her, wearing one of his shirts, the faded blue one I gave him on our first anniversary. Josh was next to her, leaning back, smiling at her like I hadn't seen him smile at me in over a year. She reached out and brushed his hair from his forehead, tenderly, lovingly. And he let her. He didn't flinch. He didn't stop her. He didn't even notice I was standing in the doorway. I dropped the wine bottle. The crash echoed like a gunshot. They both jumped. Josh stood up fast. Lacey gasped, eyes wide, lips parted like she'd been caught mid-confession. I came home early, I said, my voice steady. Too steady. I thought we could have dinner. Josh opened his mouth, then closed it. Lacey stood, but I held up my hand. Don't. Just, don't. I turned around and walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry, not then. I went to a hotel that night. I didn't text him. I didn't answer his calls. He left 5 voicemails. I didn't listen to a single one. The next morning, I woke up in a sterile hotel room with a dry mouth and a pounding head. No dreams. Just that blank, metallic silence you get after something inside you finally breaks. I stared at the ceiling for an hour. Not thinking. Not even really feeling. I was aware of my body only in the most basic sense: the cold air on my arms, the tightness in my chest, the weight of my limbs refusing to move. Eventually, I checked my phone. 8 missed calls from Josh. 3 new voicemails. A few texts. Please talk to me. It's not what it looked like. Can we just have a conversation? I stared at the screen, waiting for anger or sadness to come. Nothing did. Instead, I went downstairs, got a coffee from the lobby, and sat outside in the morning sun, surrounded by strangers and traffic. It was the first time in months I'd felt completely alone, and strangely, it wasn't scary. It was relief. Later that day, I went home not to make peace, but to make decisions. The house was quiet when I arrived. Too quiet. I walked in and found Josh in the kitchen, looking like he hadn't slept. His eyes were rimmed red, hair disheveled. There was a sadness to him, but also something else, guilt without shame. The kind that says I'm sorry you saw it, not I'm sorry I did it. Where's Lacey? I asked. He hesitated. She went out. Thought it was better if we talked alone. I nodded, stepping round him and walking straight to the bedroom. My suitcase was still in the closet, and touched. I started pulling clothes off hangers, folding them mechanically. What are you doing? He asked from the doorway. Packing, I said simply. Liv, please, can we talk about this? I stopped folding and turned to look at him. Talk about what, Josh? That I've been living with your emotional affair for 3 months. That your best friend slowly pushed me out of my own life and you let her. He stepped forward. Nothing happened. I laughed, and not cruelly, just tired. It doesn't have to be physical to be betrayal. You chose her every single day. In all the small ways that matter. He opened his mouth again, but I held up my hand. You let her become your partner. I was just the woman who paid half the mortgage. He didn't deny it. He didn't chase me when I walked past him with the suitcase. He didn't beg. I think he knew it was over. And that hurt more than anything else, not the betrayal, not the lies, not even Lacey. What shattered me was realizing how easy it was for him to lose me. Like I was a placeholder until the person he really wanted was ready to take over. I didn't go to my sister's place, or to my parents. I drove 3 hours to a small urban by the coast. Off-season, quiet, perfect. The owner left a bottle of wine and a note. Sometimes, life's tide just needs to go out before it can come back in. I don't know if she wrote that for me, or if she left that note for everyone, but it stuck with me. The first few days, I barely moved. I didn't eat much. Didn't cry either. I sat on the porch, stared at the gray water, and let silence do what words couldn't. I didn't try to make sense of what happened. Some things don't have sense. They just hurt. On the 4th morning, I opened my laptop. Not to check emails. Not for social media. Just to write. I poured everything into a blank document. All the moments I swallowed instead of speaking. The little humiliations. The day I felt myself being replaced. I wrote it all, not for revenge, not for an audience, but to hear myself again. That was the moment I realized how far I'd drifted from who I used to be. I used to be curious. I used to be creative. I used to love my own company. Somehow, in the fog of keeping a crumbling marriage afloat, I lost all of that and handed it over piece by piece, until I was just the echo of someone who used to dream. A week later, I filed for divorce. Josh didn't fight it. Not even a phone call. Just a curt email from his lawyer confirming receipt. I assume Lacey's still living in that house, my house. Maybe she redecorated again. Maybe she took my name off the lease and replaced my favorite painting with something new and chic. That part doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that I started over. It wasn't dramatic. No spontaneous cross-country move. No rebound love story. Just small, consistent choices to come back to myself. I took a new job in a quieter city. I bought a bike. I started painting again badly, silly, joyfully. I made new friends, joined a book club. I even took myself out on a real date, candles, wine, and all. Just me. I used to think that being left or replaced was the worst thing that could happen. But I was wrong. The worst thing is staying where you're not seen, and calling that love. I don't hate them. Not anymore. I don't wish them well either, if I'm honest. I just wish them gone from my mind, a chapter closed, a lesson learned. People ask sometimes if I miss him. I don't. I miss who I thought he was. But I love who I'm becoming more. Months passed. One evening, while walking along a coastal trail near my new place, I passed a couple holding hands, laughing, leaning into each other like they had no idea the world was watching. It used to sting, seeing that kind of closeness, like a reminder of what I'd lost. But this time, I didn't feel the pinch of envy or pain. Just a quiet acknowledgement. I had loved, I had lost, and I had survived. Survival wasn't pretty. It didn't come in heroic moments or big gestures. It came in making my own breakfast again, and rearranging furniture to fit my taste, and sleeping diagonally across a bed that used to feel too cold. It came in trusting my gut again, slowly, after months of gaslighting and self-doubt. One day, I bumped into a mutual friend from back home. He didn't ask much, just a polite smile, then said, "Josh and Lacey are still together." But it's not what they expected, apparently. I shrugged. It never is. And I meant that. What they had came at the cost of someone else's heart, and I think deep down they knew it. I didn't wish them misery, but I no longer imagined they were living some magical fantasy without me. In the end, people don't get peace from betrayal, not real peace. As for me, I was finally at home in myself again. I adopted a cat. I started volunteering on weekends. I signed up for a ceramics class, and now my kitchen is filled with wobbly bowls and imperfect mugs that no one else would ever sell, but they're mine. Every crooked edge, every smudged glaze, every shape that doesn't quite match, I love them more because they're flawed. Like me, I don't regret the years I gave to that marriage. I don't regret trying to make it work. I don't even regret the pain. It carved something new in me, as something deeper, quieter, more real. I know what it's like now to lose yourself and still find a way back. I'm not angry anymore. I'm free. And sometimes, that's better than happy. I used to think closure would come with an apology. A confession. Something neat and cinematic that would make everything feel justified. But it never came. Josh didn't show up at my door. Lacey didn't send a long, teary message. And in time, I realized that silence was the closure. They didn't say anything because they didn't know how. Or maybe they didn't care to. Either way, it stopped mattering. The freedom came not in revenge or confrontation, but in reclaiming myself. I took back my mornings, my thoughts, my future. I stopped defining myself by what they did to me and started defining myself by what I chose next. I traveled alone. Not to escape, but to explore again. Lisbon, Kyoto, Vancouver. I walked through strange streets with no destination, getting lost on purpose, finally trusting my own internal compass again. And slowly, people entered my life who saw me. Not the broken version of me, not the wounded partner, just me, as I am. Whole. Flawed. Becoming. I stopped needing to explain what had happened. When people asked about my past, I gave them the truth, short, honest, and embellished. I was married once. It ended. I learned a lot. Then I'd smile, and they'd nod, and we'd talk about something better. I don't flinch anymore when I hear her name. I don't picture them together, imagining what could have been or what might still be. I don't need to compare. Their life is theirs now, and mine finally is mine. And you know what? It's good. Not perfect. Not a fairy tale, but real. And peaceful. And mine. Sometimes, the people who betray you don't get punished the way you imagined. They don't fall apart. They don't crumble. They go on, but so do you, and that's the power they never saw coming. They moved on, I moved forward, and that makes all the difference.